Hello, welcome everyone. Our topic this week is observing infants and toddlers, including documentation and the reflective approach. Through observation, we can learn an awful lot about children. When we look at what they're doing, when we consider what they might be thinking or what they might be trying to figure out, when we take into consideration what hypothesis they may have come to, we gain a deeper understanding of the child. When working with children, typically the goal of observing is to look at how and what the children are learning in order to have a better understanding of how and what to teach them. Through the cyclical process of observation, documentation, and interpretation, a rich learning experience can be provided through which future interest in learning can continue. Observations of infants and toddlers might look a little different than that of older children. However, infants, long before expressive language is obtained, readily reveal information about what they're thinking and feeling. Observation is a starting point, which allows us to really take the time and interpret the thoughts, ideas, and intentions that can be discovered and supported. Observation really is where teaching and learning begin. My favorite question when working at an infant and toddler center was always, "What do the children learn here?" or "What are you teaching them?" I loved this question so much because it gave me a platform to elaborate on the ways in which infants and toddlers learn and the many ways that learning can be supported. And of course, I would emphasize the importance of social emotional development and trust as the foundation for all other development. It's always so satisfying to put that plug in. But I think the average person just doesn't understand what could possibly be taught to infants and toddlers. Typically, when the word curriculum is brought up, people think of school readiness in terms of reading and writing. So how can that be implemented with 0 to 3? Well, it starts with the perspective and understanding of curriculum. This picture, for example, shows two children sitting at a table together painting. Is this curriculum? What about this picture? To some, this could simply be a child playing with animal figures. Is this curriculum? In her text, Teaching and Learning with Infants and Toddlers, Where Meaning Making Begins, Mary Jane McGuire-Fong states, "Teaching in the early years is most effective when children have ample opportunities to engage in meaningful play, well supported by materials and experiences that fascinate and engage their natural ways of making meaning." So if we can think of curriculum as context for learning, we open the door to unlimited opportunity to support the development of infants and toddlers in all domains. Ronald Lally, a pioneer in the field of infant and toddler development, says, "What is happening in infant care today is a revolution in thinking about curriculum. The most critical curriculum components are no longer seen as lessons and lesson plans, but rather the planning of settings and experiences that allow learning to take place. We're moving away from the traditional lesson plans of specific content or that are theme-based, and we're moving in a direction of child-led reflective planning that involves the context as the curriculum." What does it mean when we say curriculum is context? It's referring to the environment, essentially, as a teacher. It is the way in which the space is set up, what materials are intentionally included in the play space, what is being offered during care routines, and how we converse and interact with infants in the moment as well as throughout the day. There needs to be a starting point with the process in utilizing curriculum as context. For some, this may be a new concept that is easy to grasp, and for others that have learned curriculum and curriculum planning in the past in a different way, this may be a big change that takes some practice and time to get used to. Reflective curriculum planning starts with observing and reflecting. Observing children itself is not something new. It started long ago with scientists such as Piaget, who used observations to develop theory. Observations continue to be the primary way scientists learn about behavior in children and is a valuable tool for parents and caregivers to generate ideas about what children are doing, thinking, and discovering. Documenting the observation is an important piece because it allows us to hold the observation, or at least important parts of it, in memory, which we can then come back to discuss and interpret in order to decide next steps. Here is a written observation by teacher Joan. Mario and Teiko have found a trickle of water running through the dirt and repeatedly drop twigs into the flowing water. Mario shouts and Teiko repeats, "Watch! There goes!" Their eyes are glued to the twigs floating downstream. Is there an interest here that might be a springboard for curriculum? Now, we can't talk about this in a group, but I know it would be a great group discussion. The thing is, there isn't one right answer, and it's beneficial to reflect on observations with others or in a group because there may be different interpretations and ideas that are generated about what the child was thinking or feeling. The next part of the planning process is to ask a question based off of the observation in order to extend the experience. Here we have a planning web with several ideas of potential future experiences. Which would you choose to do and why, based on the observed interest of the children? Here they have crossed off the ideas of adding objects that sink and float, as well as water table with leaves, shells, and boats. Although fun experiences with water, they may not specifically build off of the observation and the children's interest. The other options here are water hose and inclined tube on fence, with hose make big stream in dirt, and adding dishpans of water, foam blocks, and cups. Reflect on each idea. Again, which would you choose to do and why, based on the observed interest? Then comes planning the possibilities. This is where the ideas from the planning web are implemented and the context is decided. The context involves adding a water hose and inclined tube on fence, with hose make big stream in dirt, and adding dishpan of water, foam blocks, and cups. The planning question is, how will the children explore a water trough into which we've inserted a water hose? Following would be an observation and reflection as the cyclical process continues. Here's a picture of the context and the children exploring. Looking at this picture, ask yourself, how are these children revealing their thinking? There is so much in this one picture, in this one moment of time, that can give us information about what they're thinking and feeling. These are observations of the children in the pictures to the left. The top picture, M pulls hose through trough, looks through open end of trough, puts hose back in, looks at flowing water, removes hose for a second, and replaces it in trough. Then the bottom picture. T holds large tub at trough bottom and fills it successfully, then holds small cup below water flow, but water bounces out. First was the planning question, then an observation of the children exploring the materials and environment created as a context for learning. Now comes the interpretation. This is the picture and observation of M pulling the hose through the trough, looking at it, and putting it back in. The interpretation is, M discovered the cause and effect relationship. Hose makes the running water. Another example of interpretation. This is the picture and observation of T holding a large tub and filling it up with water from the trough, and then doing the same thing with a small cup. The interpretation is, T experiments with different size containers and notices how the force of water makes it hard to fill the cup. Now, based off of these observations and interpretations, a new planning web could be done, from which a new plan of possibilities could be created. This is the cycle of reflective curriculum planning. We document in order to share children's thinking with others. After going through the reflective curriculum planning process, now look at these pictures and ask yourself, how are these children revealing their thinking? This may look familiar to some. It's an example of a lesson plan possibly designed to teach a specific concept or skill and covering specific developmental domains. The problem is that it's a random collection of activities offering little pattern for infants to use in connecting one idea to another. There is a circle time, art, and outside time covered every day with a random activity plugged into that column. Then we have an example of theme-based curriculum. Can you tell what the theme for Monday is? How about Thursday? There's the same problem as before in that it is a collection of activities. They may not be random in the teacher's mind due to there being an underlying theme. However, to the child, those connections may be lost or never found. The purpose behind theme-based planning is to stick with a pre-chosen theme. How the children respond to the activity has little leverage on what will be planned next. Theme-based curriculum provides brief exposure with no opportunity for deeper investigation, and new themes are typically being introduced weekly. That is exactly what distinguishes reflective planning. It is based off of the child's natural urge to explore and investigate their surroundings. It is generated and guided by observations of how children engage in the world. Investigations and explorations have no limits. They can last days to weeks, even longer, depending on the children, how they engage, and their interests.